word. Crucially, I don't think this is the apocalyptic alarm that most people who are deeply worried or concerned about this stuff, um, I don't think it's what they portend. Like, okay, yes, jobs will be lost. My job could be lost. As jobs were like entire industries were lost at the agrarian revolution 10,000 years ago, when work was nomadic, work was hunting and gathering, and then it became farming. And then again at the industrial revolution, manual labor was supplanted by machines. And then again at the digital revolution, computers did the calculations. And this one is a bit different because I think it will eliminate work, but not for a whole bunch of new work, but I think as work as intrinsic to social functioning. The notion that the plug of technology, or specifically artificial general intelligence, where you can just simply say, do this, not have the AI bring up what someone else has done, like find an article, but actually do the work. But the notion that the plug needs to be pulled on all this, and for the sake of keeping people in their jobs bound to wages and salaries, doing the same tasks their whole life, to afford an ever inflating system where the necessities of life go increasing and increasing, um, because it's because that's absolutely corrupt and ridiculous, or naive or insidious to strive to preserve that. People doing stuff that they wouldn't do their whole life, except that they have to afford the system. The core definition of an invention or an innovation or technology broadly is that it is deflationary. The cost of time, labor, money, energy, all that diminishes when there is technology. And therefore, the people be truly ought to become wealthier in time and with money. And because it's not that like an email doesn't reduce the time and the expenses of the Pony Express or carrier pigeons or whatever, or that factory farms with their machines and their mass production doesn't actually make cheap food. Of course it does, but it's not affordable, or getting more and more affordable to, asymptotically reaching free because of human greed and because of consolidations of power. That's it. Those forces thwart the baked in deflationary process of technology. Now, this does tie into what I want to share about the future of time. I'm hoping to express what I sense many feel, but really struggle to articulate here. It's a disorienting intuition that time feels faster now. Now, what is now? And our memories feel less stable, not just the macro ones, like when did certain things happen in history, but the ones even within a family. When did we do this? How did these experiences unfold? And the world itself, obviously, I think, seems strangely unreal or cartoonishly chaotic. Many people obviously say that the years feel faster as they age. But lately, and when people say that, they will still say, but the day, they would historically say, but the day still feels long or the week feels long, but the years feel short. But lately, I'm hearing from every direction. By that, I mean, not just here, but in space, but in time, like across generations, not just older people, younger people, that the week feels as fast as the weekend, and each day flies by, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're having fun or um, busting it at the office or at work. And that even seconds feel briefer. Try counting, not right now, but when you get a chance, try counting one Mississippi, two Mississippi with a stopwatch. I find that the words seem too slow for the passage of time itself, for the passage of an individual second. But wasn't didn't we have that, because to say that at a normal pace seemed to be synonymous with the passage of a single second. Now, I guess physics tells us the second has not changed. The units of time have not changed, as evidenced by atomic clocks remaining steady and satellites and GPS still being able to orchestrate everything. I don't know, and I'm not qualified to speak on all that. Um, but if that's true, maybe what is accelerating is not the time, but the tempo of consciousness. A mind trained on our new constant stimulation begins to outrun stillness. So, this is until every single second feels too narrow to inhabit, given the complexity of our attention and distraction. So, while some interpret this sensation through far out speculative ideas like timeline fractures due to activities like particle physics and with particle physics and the fears that CERN, with its large hadron particle collider, could actually be like opening microscopic black holes or portals to other dimensions, which is like shifting or altering our entire timeline, as evidenced by these cultural artifacts or distorted echoes. For example, the Mandela Effect. If you haven't heard this term, it was coined back in the wake of the passing of Nelson Mandela of South Africa in 2013, I believe, which led to an outpouring of tribute around the world, but also his death perplexed millions of people, including myself at the time, due to the apparently ostensibly false memory of hearing about his death in prison back in late 80s, early 90s. I kind of vaguely remember it as like 91. And people then in forums started sharing their recollections of the words of tribute from heads of state. One journalist even reported having the memory that she had an interview scheduled with him back at that time when he was in prison, but ultimately it was canceled due to his failing health, and then um, wiped off the calendar altogether because of his ensuing death. So that's a very very bizarre, specific kind of recollection from someone. So if you're not familiar with this, let me just introduce a few other so-called Mandela effects to see how they land with you. And if you're already familiar with this, or you are aware of these specific ones that I'm going to introduce, um, then hold back your answers to see what the impact is on people coming at this for the first time. So in the you can use the chat box here. Um, Type what you remember to be the famous line from Forrest Gump that his mom taught him about life. Take a look at that together. Close, Lisa. Life life is like a box of chocolates. Okay, yep, yep, yep. Box of chocolates. About what I'm mostly concerned about, what precedes box of chocolates. Yep, you never know what you're going to get. Okay, so the consensus so far of what precedes box of chocolates, and you never know what you're going to get, is life is like. But in reality, it's life was like a box of chocolates. Um, and that doesn't even make sense. Even Tom Hanks said life is like a box of chocolates at some award show. And when it's referenced that way. But if you go back and watch the movie, he never says that. He says life was like a box of chocolates, which doesn't even make sense, because how would that be advice for life if it's talking about the past? Okay. Um, let's do another one. Um, Again, this is a very well-known Mandela effect, so hold off on this if you're familiar with the discrepancy. In the chat box, um, I'm curious what you think the spelling of Berenstein is in Berenstein Bears. And again, only if you're not familiar with this. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So we got another consensus, um, at least on the part I'm concerned with. Now, here is, I like that spelling, Lisa. That's how it should be. Now, here is the real spelling. And what's most important is the discrepancy between the part everyone agreed on, which is Stein. That is incorrect. It was Berenstain. It is and was Berenstain. And nobody can produce a book spelling it the way that you all spelled it. Okay, another one that I had fun with uh, my mom the other day. A Christmas classic song. I'll be home for Christmas. You can blank on me. Please fill in the blank in the chat. Thank you. Oh, one person got it right, and everybody else agrees on the false memory. It's plan on me. Go ahead and check it out on the old records or on YouTube. That doesn't even make sense, right? You can plan on me. Um, but that's what it was, apparently. Let's just do a few shotgun round of some more Mandela effects. You don't have to type anything. Fruit of the Loom logo has never had a cornucopia. Curious George never had a tail. Pikachu never had a painted black tip on his tail. The show Sex in the City was never Sex in the City. It's now and always Sex and the City. The Monopoly Man never had a monocle, and there was never a Jiffy peanut butter, only Jif peanut butter. Well, what is it with this? Because some of this really kind of trips me out, especially the "you can plan on me." As a musician, that's pretty odd. What's with this and the apparent acceleration of time, and where is this all headed? For me, with a background in psychology and mental health, I think the more compelling explanation may be psychological rather than cosmological. At least that's what I'm more qualified to examine. Um, Alterations of perception and neural processing, because again, a profound civilizational shift is underway, as noted in the beginning, marked by the mass migration or shoehorning of daily life into virtual space. I think this is the crucial variable that I want to drill into across the whole arc of humankind on this planet. We have only lived in the internet in this century. Yeah, there was an internet at the end of the previous century, but we've only lived in the internet like we're doing right now in this century. And only some of us alive today will be the only ones of this entire arc of humanity to have had one foot in both worlds, or to have grown up in the old world and now be adapting to the new one. And within the internet, we're barely 20 years into living inside a smartphone. Yes, we had phones, and then yes, we had cell phones, but you know, I got my first smartphone in like 2010, I think. So 15 years of full time, and then less than that, of full time relating socially through social media. We don't yet know what the full impact this has on consciousness or on a whole lifetime, because there hasn't been a whole lifetime living this way. There hasn't been a whole lifetime in virtual space, or this virtual space. There has been lifetimes in other virtual spaces, which we'll touch on in a moment. Let's try to capture the magnitude of what I just said, of this cognitive shift. Something like 70% of people no longer finish a single book within a year. And those that do, it's usually like some kind of popular or classic self-help book like The Laws of Success, or some other business optimization or life hack stuff. Now consider the value and the qualitative impact that reading the classic novels had on our minds. You would live in these worlds for weeks or months or years even. Now, while the authors crafted these so-called virtual spaces, because that wasn't our physical reality, um, a few of us in my family were talking about how powerful it was to read To Kill a Mockingbird in school, and I think that was Harper Lee's only book, but it wouldn't even been published today without it without an agreement probably for it to be a series and a television series and prequels and sequels. But my point is that the authors gave us the instruction, so to speak, for a DIY universe. Your imagination had to build it over and over every night before bed, in the waiting rooms of the doctor, in the airports, on the planes, on the trains, in the buses. And now we have high tech movies, and we still have shows, like we had TV shows throughout the 20th century. Um, but even that does a lot more work for us than in the past, because when TV shows came out, there was once a week, only for so many weeks, and your mind had to sit with those images, those vignettes, and then reshape, um, with imagination, and predict what was going to happen. And you had time to analyze. I was reading about how Netflix pressures its creators, including Stranger Things, the Duffer Brothers, to literally spell out the plot over and over throughout the show, because and that's why they kept doing that in season 5. Like, this is this, and this is what we're going to do, because they know that people are half watching the show with the phone in their hand, half distracted. And so if they lose the plot, they may lose the viewer. And that's pretty sad, because it means that the artists or the authors can't just paint the landscape the way they want, paint the story the way they want, because they need the funding, right? If they're going to do it on that scale. Now, with the average time staring into these black screens reaching 7 to 9 hours per day, depending on whether, uh, depending on who you are and what you do, or if you're a student or an employee, that's a real paradigm shift. Just imagine that all devices were instantly eliminated, and you right now reclaimed 8 hours of your life only for seeing physical reality. No shows, no television, no phones, no tablets. Well, first off, most of us would go through withdrawal from internet addiction. But also, we do complain about our time poverty, and yet our mental relationship to time is sort of like a thermostat. Room temperature spans only about 4 degrees Fahrenheit, because any warmer would be too hot, and any cooler than that quickly becomes too cold. Similarly, the tension between hyperstress and hypostress is so fine. So to even be someone who could unplug or unplug more, you have to confront this state, this mental state. But can boredom even remain if curiosity stays too? And so, 1/3 of the day, 1/3 of our lives now, is spent in, I guess, what I would describe as a pseudo dissociative state, because we're not really present to physical reality. we know time seems to pass fast while having fun or in a flow state, but doom scrolling is also a kind of negative flow state, more induced on us passively rather than actively, like making art or playing a game or sport through intention. But what is the net effect of all this scrolling and consuming all these posts? The news is pretty much worthless after a matter of minutes or hours or maybe days. And that's what's going on right now, at the national or international or political level. So much is happening so quickly. You just have to drop the thing you're thinking about today. Social media reactions in the first 10, 20 minutes now accurately predict a story's shelf life or half life. So our memories aren't as rich nor as deep as they used to be. And that is why, that explains why a road trip to a new place feels longer on the way there than, and shorter on the way back, because less memories are formed after you've seen it. This also influences the general acceleration or sense of acceleration with time perception as we age. Everything is novel in childhood, but then every unit of time becomes a smaller fraction of lifetime. 1 year to a 1 year old is a whole lifetime. 1 year to a 100-year-old is 1% of lifetime. This was first proposed by French philosopher Paul Genet back in 1897. And I thought I came up with this many years ago until I found the founder. But it's since been referred to as the logarithmic perception of time theory, which is to say, time keeps compressing as we age because of what I said. But if you were to live to 100, 1 year would be such a small fraction of memory, such a small fraction or perception of lifetime. But this suggests that the vast majority of time perception is experienced in childhood. And so like the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas would feel as long as someone's entire 75th year of life. But I think this also is reflected in stories or autobiographies, which seem to be really heavily loaded in the first third of life with content or with depth of recollection. But we're losing the thickness of time and the depth of living. And since we're at this or in this dawn of a new era that we outlined, I believe it is time we really plan spiritually for how deep we want to live and what we really need to buffer ourselves from the cultural and corporate forces that seek to extract and harvest our time and attention, time being uh, such a precious, non renewable resource. I want to wrap up by circling back to the cosmic scale. Um, and and if there could be an increasing rate of change in the universe across cosmic history, stars formed rapidly early on, according to astrophysics, and chemical complexity increased. Then life emerged, then intelligence appeared. And now technology is rapidly accelerating change. So while time itself may not be accelerating as it's measured by atomic clocks, the amount of change per unit time may be accelerating. And this is what really matters to the mind. Time is change. Time is change. As far as we as subjective um, as subjects of time, as far as we're concerned. Time may not be accelerating, but history is. Everything is shifting faster than we can inhabit fully. This is the haunting paradox of time poverty in the age of convenience. But without a universal reference frame, because it's not like the universe is plodding along on God's time. There is no universal time. There is no universal now. What's now for us here um, is totally different from a different observer. That's relativity. Um, Saying, was it like now for you over there is like saying, what is it like here for you over there? There is no here, there. There is no now, then, or um, in some other point in space. So in that, well, without this universal reference frame, saying time is globally speeding up or slowing down is not well defined in physics, as far as I can understand. And in that strict sense, we cannot then meaningfully say the universe's time rate has changed or not, because there's no external clock to compare it to. Therefore, um, while this can't be proved, it also can't be disproved that our universe could be inside a parent black hole. How would we know? All the physical processes, including atoms, clocks, brains, light frequencies, that would all scale together. And the result would be no internal observer could detect or prove the change. So I leave room for all these possibilities while encouraging myself and others here today to live fully. That is, I think, the takeaway from all from this tsunami of change that is seconds away on the cosmic scale. To live fully, to have rich conversations, to build things, to make art, to spend time at a local coffee shops, those that remain, and local establishments where people are making local art and buy their local products, um, but slow down the pace in that way if you can, and make deep contact with nature. Plug into the big battery, unplug from the system as the system can permit, or as you can increase over time. Your body may appear on the surface of this world, but make your heart as deep as the ocean. All right, I'll stop there.